Treat humans kindly in life, else they will find you in death. Those were the words my mother often told me. I still remember her and all the bedtime stories she told me when I was a kid, on our homeworld of Arcanor 5. Stories from many different worlds across the galaxy, written in countless books. I forgot most of them now that I'm a soldier, but a few have stuck with me. Stories from an old book, older than this endless war I'm fighting in. A book with no name written on it, save for a golden cross on its black covers. The same golden cross on a golden chain she wore around her neck. I grew to love those stories of men from a world so far away from our own, hearing the voice of their God and being put through trials and tests to prove the strength of their faith. My mother loved them also, so much so that she even named me after one of those humans, much to the displeasure of my grandparents. Those tales were the reason bedtime was something I looked forward to. No matter how many times I've heard them, I still enjoy hearing them anew. It was not just the stories themselves, but the way my mother told them. She spoke with passion and conviction every time she would tell me the story of Noah and the great flood, or of King David and he slew a giant with nothing more than a rock and a slingshot. It felt as if those stories came from her heart, not her memory. But they were just stories. As I grew older, I came to realize my mother was unwell. Losing my father was a blow that tore apart the very foundations of our clan, and my mother's mind as well. Despite the protests of my grandparents and the clan elders, she delved deep into the study of various species and their perception of the afterlife. Finally, she landed on a species known for their beliefs bordering on fanatical. Humans of Earth were insane. Though most of them were agnostic by the time they made first contact, a huge chunk of the species still firmly believed in and even structured how they lived their lives around a book written thousands of years ago, for which they had no evidence to confirm if what's written in it was true or false. They believed that their God died to absolve them of their sins and bested death itself in order to rise from the dead and grant his beloved followers immortality. Yes, humans were one of those rare species in the galaxy to believe in the afterlife, that a soul who lived a proper life would be granted eternity in heaven. The flesh may die, but the soul is immortal. For a woman who just lost the love of her life, her entire world shattered into disarray by death. This belief served as a perfect escape from the truth. No matter how you slice it, my father was dead. He may have died a hero's death, pushing a comrade out of the way of a plasma bolt, but his soul did not go to the great beyond. All that remained of him were ashes scattered across the battlefield. My mother's madness created a rift in the family. Arshinors have no illusions of immortality or something after death. We are born of the soil, conscious due to our advanced minds and intelligence, and when we die, we will feed that soil from which we came. Nothing more, nothing less. Created by evolution, not the hand of some omnipotent entity. I still love my mother, but growing up I couldn't stand to be around her as much. The clan labeled her a lunatic and ostracized her, and I would become a target of their scorn just by association. Being the son of a crazy woman and having been named after a human from their fantasy book did not make fitting in easy. I had to be the best in order to fit in with the average, and for that, for a time, I had deeply resented her. It wasn't until after I joined the military that I finally felt free of the burden that came with being Roganira's son. As a ranger, I had a fresh start. No ties to the clan I came from or who I was, save for the name I was given, but I could easily lie and say it was just a nickname. Still, at times I missed my mother and her stories. She passed away shortly after I graduated from the academy. Seems no God can heal a heart torn apart by grief and loss. She seemed peaceful in her final hours, or as such I choose to remember her. Not even on her deathbed did she let go of the maddening beliefs that caused the clan to denounce her. "Avram, Avram, come close, dear." She spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Mom?" I leaned in closer, sitting in a chair just next to her bed, my uniform freshly ironed, not even a single crease or imperfection on it. "Oh, Avram, what a handsome man you've grown into. You remind me of your father when I first met him." Those words, spoken by the woman who I'd loved all my life, who raised me to be the man I am today, brought tears to my eyes. I would have wiped them, but I did not wish to dirty the sleeves of my uniform. When all is said and done, I loved my mother dearly. Perhaps that was the reason why I did not reject her final gift and her final request. Son, where I am going, I do not need this. Take it, Avram. Let it keep you safe, as it has kept me safe all these years, she said, her frail, trembling hands reaching behind her head and taking off the necklace with the cross. Mother, please, I can't. I tried protesting, but the look in her eyes had words stop midway up my throat. I understand, Avram, that our people do not share my beliefs. I know the names they called me and the names they will remember me by. My dear boy, my only regret in life is that the way I lived and what I believed in made your life harder than it had to be. Please, can you find the strength to forgive me? She asked, a single tear rolling down her cheek. Yes, I practically yelled, leaning over closer as my hands wrapped around hers. Do not even ask, Mom. I hold nothing against you, ever. You always were a kind-hearted boy, my mother whispered, her trembling hands rising as my head lowered. I could feel as she put the necklace around my neck, carefully not to get it tangled in the antlers I had kept well kept. Please wear this, Avram. You may not feel the Lord's love through it, but you will feel mine. Always and forever. I will, Mom. Avram, I know I asked plenty of you, but could you please pray with me? One last time. I clasped my hands around hers, closing my eyes. Yes, Mom, I will. It did not take long for her to pass. It was painless, according to the doctor, during the night. When the morning sun rose, my mother was no longer there to greet it. I was very young when I lost my father, too young to understand the wretched pain left behind when a loved one dies. For the first time in 26 cycles, I fully understood how my mother came to be the way she was after his death. Human faith, though nothing more than a work of fiction, was beautiful and comforting. I knew better than to surrender myself to such ideas, but the only way to quell my pain and keep grief from sinking its teeth into my heart was to, for a time, tell myself I would meet my mother again after I died. It was a crutch, one that would help me through that period of loneliness and sadness, until the rapids of life took reins again. As much as I hate to admit, it was not her love nor her devotion that would shape me into the believer I am today. Fear was the catalyst for that. My military career kept progressing as I excelled, both in service and in study. Eventually, much quicker than any of my generation, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant and given command over a small band of operatives fighting against the very humans, whose God my mother loved so dearly, on the faraway planet of Inertian 749. G. Morning, Morp, I said, walking through the hallway of the compound. Morning, sir, saluted Morfeliger. Walk with me. Yes, sir. Morfeliger, or Morp as I came to call him, was the designated squad leader of the Gurmeg Assault Squad. Seeing a lot of myself in the young man, the two of us got along wonderfully. I heard the squad came under attack last night, during one of the scheduled patrols of the outer sectors, I asked, looking over at him as we walked. His posture never faltered as he answered. Yes, sir. We came into contact with a night assault squad of humans, which resulted in a gunfight. How many casualties? 27, sir. None of them ours, Morp said with a hint of pride in his voice. I see. Have the bodies been cleared out? I asked, stopping in front of the door at the end of the hallway. No, sir. It is a high-risk area, so we decided it was best we leave the bodies for their comrades to collect, he replied. I see. Very well. Humans have similar burial methods to Arcanor. They bury their dead in the ground, and when there is no more ground left, they cremate them and place them in urns. Though unlike us, they hold a funeral procession, where a priest, a holy man in service of the god, prays for the soul of the deceased. Inertian 749. G was once a human colony world. Due to their disagreements with the Intergalactic Council, this world and many others with the Council-occupied space was to be recovered and reinstated back under Council jurisdiction. That, of course, meant that all the human settlers would have to pack their bags and relocate somewhere else. Their species was never one to give up planets once they claimed them as their own. Coexistence? Sure. Surrender and capitulation? Out of the question. With the Council wanting to make an example of the humans, to show what happens to those who try to oppose the Council's decisions, This disagreement escalated quickly into an all-out war. Onershin and other worlds like it witnessed bloodshed. Human settlers refused to evacuate, dismissing the warnings of their own government. Most of them died when the Council forces attacked, leaving very few humans still fighting back when their forces arrived. By that point, humanity had been interplanetary and intersectoral for centuries, holding an ironclad grip on any habitable or resourceful planet in the Orion system, and a few outside. Out of the 47 members of the Council, only 38 resigned their votes and opinions when they realized the humans would not buckle under the threat of military retaliation from the Council. The remaining 9 went and declared war on the humans, Arcanor being among those 9. The war was a slog. Neither side was making much progress. The humans held their planets tightly and defended them with a ferocity that made the 38 members who rescinded their votes glad they'd done so. Humans lost a few colony worlds, sure, but those were all chalked up to calculated strategic losses in order to preserve supply lines and keep their forces fit and ready to defend actually important worlds. And they defended them ruthlessly, with Council missions and assaults on key human worlds always ending in 100% casualty rates for the Council forces. Humanity did not negotiate, letting bodies wrapped in black bags, which they sent to Council-controlled planets, deliver their message. Leave. Worlds that did fall and ended up back under Council control became wild worlds. Colonists of various species that were sent there wouldn't last long before requesting transfer to other worlds. According to them, the planets themselves hated them. The soil would grow no crops besides crops that were grown by humans. The wildlife, as if possessed, would act much more aggressive and hostile, beasts often making their way into settlements and attacking the colonists. Mitrux, a much more mystical race compared to my own, would spit and mumble a prayer before talking about those abandoned colony worlds every time. The Council is wasting its time. They should return those worlds to the humans. They are already tainted by their touch. Their blood soaks the soil, making beasts wild and crops sickly. Superstition of a less advanced species, nothing more. Of the 9 members that were at war with the humans in the name of the Council, Arcanor and Tumia were the most technologically advanced, not subscribing to such silly ideas. Humans merely were on these worlds for so long that they left a strong imprint on the ecosystem, and their sudden absence caused a shift in the long-standing balance. The soil was used to their fertilizers, probably being so saturated by it that other crops used by other species had a rough time adjusting. The same went for the beasts. The wildlife probably noticed the absence of a dominant force in the area and decided to fill in the gap, much to the dismay of the new, less aggressive settlers. Morp. Yes, sir? The humans are likely to try and recover the bodies of their fallen comrades tonight, before the wildlife picks them apart. You and your squad set up an ambush there at sundown, I told Mort before heading to my office. Yes, sir. The soldier saluted me and went about his business. Such underhanded tactics were unbefitting of a ranger. Only on paper, though. War is messy, and once you're knee-deep in it, you'll do anything at your disposal to end it as quickly as possible, and with as few casualties on your side as possible. The latter I've managed with excellent results. The former, however, much less so. I've been stuck on this world for almost an entire cycle. Its grayness became unbearable. The rain seasons lasted months, with a sickly fog always present during those times, be it day or night. So little was happening that I had to wait days, sometimes even weeks before I could write a single paragraph of actually meaningful information in my reports to HQ. At times like these, I would often remember the stories my mother told me, sometimes looking them up on the Intergalactic Information Database and listening to them before going to bed. Engrossed in my work, I barely noticed the sunset. I checked the clock. It was almost time for Morp and his unit to head out. Damn, I lost track of time. Seems they should already be in the ambush position by now. I thought while leaving my room and heading down the hallway to the control room. Morp, come in, I said through the comms upon arriving. Morp, do you copy? Hear you loud and clear, sir, replied the unit leader. Are you in position? Affirmative. Morp paused for a moment, but kept the line open, holding the communicator close to his mouth by the sound of soft breathing coming through the line. There is an issue, sir, he finally said. What issue? I'm not your high school sweetheart, so don't beat around the bush with me. I want info, soldier. What issues do you have to report? I could hear confusion and a hint of fear in Morp's voice. In times like this, a stern voice works best to snap a soldier back to their senses. You waiting on my retirement, Morp? I asked you a damn question. The bodies, sir. The bodies are gone. He finally spoke up. Well, maybe they've just went round the bushes to relieve themselves before they come back and continue being dead. No, sir, I mean, Morp stammered. Did your squad check the area for fresh tracks? Maybe the enemy retrieved their comrades earlier. Maybe the wildlife got them, I asked the soldier, leaning forward over the communicator. Yes, sir. No fresh tracks were found coming to the area. He spoke, followed by a moment of whispering, most likely between him and one of his squad mates. Fresh track have been found leaving away from the area. You telling me the bodies just upped and walked away? All evidence indicates to that, sir. All right, guess we missed our window of opportunity. Pack up and haul ass back to base on the double. Roger that, sir. Gurmeg squad returning to... What's that? Shit, contact. 3 o'clock? 9 o'clock? Fuck. They're coming from all sides. 12 o'clock. Open fire and fall back. Shit, Quinn. The control room fell silent for a moment as the communication line cut off, all eyes staring directly at the device, while I tried to reestablish contact with the Gurmeg squad. Morp! Morp, come in! What the fuck is going on out there? I shouted into the communicator, but got no response. You! I pointed to one of the soldiers behind me. Get on the scanner and track their tags right now. Yes, sir, right away, she replied, moving to the instrument next to me, her hooves clattering against the floor tiles with each rush step. They are coming down the hill, sir. Multiple hostiles in pursuit. I nodded and rushed out of the control room, followed by a group of soldiers. Arming themselves along the way, we exited the main hallway straight into the front courtyard of the base. Gurmeg squad, or what was left of them, were running down the hill, some tripping over themselves and tumbling to the bottom in a desperate attempt to flee their attackers. Atop the hill stood a single human soldier, seemingly unarmed and looking down at the disgraceful display of cowardice my men had shown. The trees behind him softly moved and rustled in the wind. He did not seem armed, though with how dark the night was, I couldn't be sure if he wasn't or if he simply chose not to shoot Morp's fleeing unit in their backs. I felt anger bubbling in my stomach. This wretch stood up there, looking down on us, the smug look he must have had on his face. Give me that, I hissed, grabbing the rifle from one of the soldiers next to me. Even through the scope, I could not see his face as I took aim and pulled the trigger without hesitation. The shot rang out through the night and the human's head jerked backwards for a moment as the bullet struck its mark. Seconds later, he slumped to the ground lifelessly and tumbled down the hill as well. No more humans appeared from the tree line atop the hill, probably realizing there was no point in further chasing the surviving Gurmeg unit soldiers. Morp arrived shortly after, winded and slightly trembling. Morp, what the fuck happened out there? I growled, glaring at him. He saluted while still trying to catch his breath. We were ambushed, sir. Any other plainly obvious details that you'd like to tell me? They wore the 39th Night Assault insignia, sir. The ones you reported to have fully wiped out to the last man in your previous encounter with them the night before, I said, becoming quickly aware that Morp's report from that night was evidently false. Yes, sir, that remains true, he answered, looking up at me. There was panic in his eyes still, but his composure was returning quickly now that he was among allies. Those were the men we gunned down. I remember some of their faces, and their gear shows clear signs of bullet holes and damage. There are no previous reports of our troops engaging in combat with this specific squad, so the damages their gear sustained can only be from that night. I turned my gaze from him to the lifeless body of the human I'd shot, now lying at the foot of the hill. If Morp's report was true, then the humans must either have some very durable gear or very powerful combat drugs that we aren't aware of, that would allow them to keep fighting even after suffering such losses. You! I turned to the soldier whose rifle I snatched and returned it to him, along with an order. Take a squad and retrieve that human's corpse. Take it to the morgue and have the coroner do a full autopsy report. I turned around and headed back into the base. The rest of you keep an eye out and get ready to provide cover if need be. That is all. Read the rest of the story on Reddit, link in the description.